The Philadelphia Experiment, Naval Cloaking and Time Travel, Part 1. A Ship That Vanished. Good evening, dear listener. As you settle into your space tonight, let the day melt away, let your body grow still, let your breath fall into rhythm, and imagine you're standing at a quiet dock in 1943. The water is calm. The sky is grey, and in the distance, a U.S. Navy destroyer escort, USS Eldridge, rests quietly in the harbor. What happens next is something history almost forgot, or tried to. The Philadelphia Experiment is one of the strangest stories ever whispered through classified corridors and worn-out notebooks. A story of a military test so unusual that it became legend. Tonight, we begin that journey, but not in fear, not in skepticism, in curiosity. It starts with an idea. What if the military had discovered a way to make ships invisible, not just to radar, but to the human eye, not by hiding, but by folding space? Imagine a cloak, not made of fabric, but of field, a magnetic field, wrapped around a vessel like fog. The goal was simple: hide ships from enemy detection, protect them in dangerous waters, keep them unseen in plain sight. But the stories say something went wrong, terribly wrong. Witnesses spoke of glowing green mist, of strange vibrations, of the ship surrounded by a strange humming. Then suddenly, gone, not just invisible, gone. And when it returned, moments or maybe hours later, some said the sailors on board were changed, some were disoriented, others fused with the metal itself, a few vanished forever. Science fiction, maybe, but the story lingers, not because it was proven, but because it was felt. And tonight we explore it slowly, gently, like stepping into a fog that might lift at any moment. Let yourself rest. Let your imagination drift. You are not on a warship. You are in your bed. And the only place we're traveling is through time, memory, and the soft hum of mystery. Part 2. A Navy Experiment, or something more. Welcome back. The sea is still, the ship is quiet, and the air around it feels thick with something unseen. Tonight, we drift a little deeper. The official word was always this: the Philadelphia Experiment never happened. Just a rumor, just confusion, just a story that got out of hand, but still, it won't go away. So let's walk through what the story says. According to those who speak of it, the Eldridge was fitted with strange equipment: massive generators, coils, tubes, wiring that didn't look like it belonged on a ship. And on the day of the test, said to be July or October, no one agrees, these machines were powered on. A hum filled the air. Sailors on board reported a strange buzzing in their heads. Some felt dizzy before anything even began. And then the mist came. A green fog, thick and unnatural, wrapped around the ship like it was being erased from the world. Witnesses say the ship began to shimmer, then fade, until there was nothing left but silence. Gone. Vanished. For minutes, or seconds, or something outside of time entirely. And when it returned, something was different. The metal had changed. Some crew members were said to be incoherent, some missing, some embedded in the deck itself. How could that be? One theory says it wasn't just cloaking, it was teleportation. Another, time travel. Not a leap into the future, but a glitch, a break in the usual flow, as if the ship hadn't just moved across space, but through the folds of reality itself. Of course, it sounds impossible, but something about the way the story lingers makes people wonder. Maybe it wasn't meant to happen. Maybe it was an accident. A door opened too wide, and something stepped through. So as you lie here, let that mystery settle in your mind like mist on water. You don't need to decide what's real. You just need to imagine the edges of what might be. Let them blur, let them breathe, and know that not all things in history are written down. Some are whispered, and some are felt. Part 3. The Man Who Knew Too Much. Welcome back. The waters have darkened, now deeper, quieter, and from somewhere below the surface of the story, a name begins to rise. Carlos Allende, or at least, that's the name he used. He's the one who first brought the Philadelphia experiment into the light. In the 1950s, he wrote a series of strange letters, handwritten, rambling, filled with odd punctuation and underlined words. The letters were sent to a man named Morris Jessup, a scientist and author who had written about UFOs and unconventional science. Allende claimed he had seen the experiment with his own eyes, that he was on a nearby ship in the harbor, that he watched the Eldridge vanish and reappear, that it wasn't just invisible, it was gone. And what he described wasn't just technology, it was something stranger, something mental. He said the ship didn't just move through space, it moved through thought. That consciousness itself played a role, that the sailors weren't prepared for it, that their minds were torn open by something they couldn't understand. Jessup read the letters. He tried to make sense of them, but they were unsteady, filled with contradictions, filled with urgency, filled with fear. Later, copies of his book, annotated with these wild claims, started circulating in secret circles, pages underlined, margins filled with strange dialogue between unnamed people. Some said it was a hoax, others said it was a warning. Jessup, shaken and obsessed, died a few years later under mysterious circumstances, and the story grew darker, because now it wasn't just about a vanished ship, it was about minds unraveling, about knowledge hidden just below the surface, too strange to ignore, too dangerous to share. So tonight, let that mystery drift through you, not heavy, not loud, just present, like a voice heard through static, like a page left folded inside a book, waiting. You don't need to solve it, just rest with it, and wonder what else might be buried in the fog. Part 4. The Fog That Knows. Welcome back. You're floating now slowly, like a ship at anchor, in still water. Not moving forward, not backward, just held. And tonight, we enter the fog. Not just the mist that covered the Eldridge, but the fog around the entire story. A fog of secrecy, of memory, of silence too deliberate to ignore. Some say what happened in Philadelphia was only the beginning, that the real experiment wasn't cloaking, but testing how far reality could bend, and that the fog, green, thick and humming, was not just energy, it was aware. Like it wasn't a machine malfunction, it was a veil, a curtain between dimensions, and somehow someone pulled it open. Witnesses who spoke of the experiment said strange things afterward. Time didn't feel right. They lost track of hours. They saw flashes of things that weren't there. Some heard voices in empty rooms, and the sailors who vanished. Some say they returned, briefly, out of nowhere, appearing beside loved ones, confused, silent, then gone again, as if reality didn't know where to place them anymore. There's no proof, only stories, but the fog seems to carry them, like it remembers. Maybe it wasn't meant to be broken through. Maybe it was meant to stay undisturbed. But for a moment, someone stepped too far, and something unseen blinked. So as you lie here, let that fog drift through your thoughts, not to frighten, just to soften the edge between real and possible. You are safe. You are still. But somewhere, just past the veil, the fog waits, listening. Part 5. Through Time, Not Just Space. Welcome back. You're deeper now, not just in story, but in space, in silence, in stillness. Let the world fade as we turn toward the part of the Philadelphia experiment that many find hardest to believe and hardest to forget. Some who speak of that day say the Eldridge didn't just vanish from one place, it vanished from one moment, that when it disappeared from the Philadelphia Naval Yard, it appeared somewhere else entirely, Norfolk, Virginia, hundreds of miles away. At the same time, two places, one ship, one moment, broken in half. And when it came back, it wasn't quite now anymore. The men on board reported strange feelings, missing time, sudden memories that didn't belong to them. Some said they dreamed of things that hadn't happened yet. Some claimed they had conversations with people long gone. And then, it gets stranger. There are stories, quiet ones, of sailors who disappeared entirely. Not during the experiment, but after. Weeks, months later, they'd simply vanish, mid-step, as if reality had momentarily lost its grip, as if time was still unraveling, slowly, invisibly. Some say this is impossible, that time doesn't work that way, that nothing can move out of time. But what if time is not a line? What if it's more like a loop, a fabric? What if something torn keeps tearing? And what if that experiment didn't just send a ship through space, but opened a fold in time that never fully closed? As you lie here now, imagine time not as a clock, but as a quiet sea, and one ship passing silently beneath its surface, not lost, just somewhere else. Part 6. The Ones Who Returned. Welcome back. You're floating now. Not in time, not in space, but in something softer, a moment between moments, a breath between thoughts. Let's return to the sailors, because some say not all were lost. A few came back, but they didn't come back the same. In the stories that followed the Philadelphia experiment, it said the men who returned were changed, not in body, at first, but in presence. Some were quiet, withdrawn, like their eyes had seen too much of something they couldn't name. Others were said to vanish, only for a moment, right in front of witnesses, flickering like an image trying to hold still on an old TV. Some stood frozen for hours, unable to speak, stuck, as if their minds were caught between now and somewhere else. And a few simply faded from view, gone in an instant. The explanations varied: stress, psychosis, confusion. But those who believed said it was more than that these men were unstuck in time, that the experiment had loosened something inside them, something that couldn't be put back. One whispered tale describes a sailor who wrote everything down, pages and pages of strange math and memories he swore weren't his. Another claimed to see the ship again, in dreams, but never in the same place twice. They weren't hurt, they weren't hunted, but they were haunted. Not by what they saw, but by where they'd been. So as you lie here now, think gently of them, not as victims, but as travelers, on a journey no one understood, carrying pieces of something strange and beautiful, and heavy. Let your breath stay soft. Let your body stay light. You don't have to go where they went. You just have to wonder what happens to those who return from places we can't explain, and who do they become? Part 7. Echoes that never ended. Welcome back. You're drifting now, deeper, slower, like a leaf floating in still air. Let's talk about what came after, because the Philadelphia experiment never really ended, not for the ones who spoke of it, not for the stories that kept surfacing, quiet, scattered, strange. Some believe the technology wasn't abandoned, that it simply went deeper, underground, moved out of the light, out of the public, hidden behind layers of silence, whispers of follow-up tests, of new experiments. This time not with ships, but with people, not just cloaking, but consciousness, time travel, dimensional travel. Rumors surfaced about Montauk, about minds being pushed beyond their limits, about portals, about machines built to stretch reality like fabric. Were these just stories? Maybe. But the pattern is hard to ignore. An experiment begins with good intentions. Make ships invisible, protect them, win the war. But then the results come in, unexpected, unrepeatable, too strange to explain. And someone says, what if this is just the beginning? What if we've touched something bigger than technology, something that listens, something that shifts when we look at it? Some say echoes of the original experiment still ripple through certain places, rooms that feel wrong, objects that hum faintly, people who seem to carry memories that don't belong to them, as if a doorway once opened, never fully closed. So tonight, let your mind float over those echoes. They are not loud. They are not frightening. Just distant sounds of something we were never meant to reach, but somehow did. You don't have to believe them. Just hear them, like a whisper carried across water, soft, endless, unresolved. Part 8. The technology that shouldn't exist. Welcome back. You're wrapped in stillness now. The story breathes with you, and we move on, quietly, into the next layer. Let's talk about the machines. The stories always mention them. Boxes, coils, magnetic field generators, devices humming with energy too strange to name. They weren't weapons. Not really. They didn't fire. They folded, bent the space around the ship, created a field, some say a bubble, where ordinary laws didn't apply. Inside the bubble, time slipped, matter shifted, perception blurred, and the ship disappeared. Some believe this technology was based on ideas from Einstein, not just relativity, but unified field theory, a concept that tried to connect gravity, magnetism, and light into one elegant system, a theory incomplete, unpublished, abandoned, but maybe not forgotten? What if someone tried to build it? And what if it worked, but not the way they expected? Not clean, not controlled, more like tearing a hole in something too large to see. There's a pattern in stories like this. First comes discovery, then comes silence. Because once something new appears, something powerful and strange, it's often hidden. Sometimes to protect us, sometimes to protect those in power, but always it disappears. Like the ship, like the records, like the men who told the truth, then vanished into rumor. As you rest now, picture those strange machines, buzzing quietly in a steel room, throwing sparks, lighting up air that suddenly feels too heavy. That's not science fiction. That's a warning, because when we push into the unknown, something sometimes pushes back. And yet we keep pushing, because we're human, and we want to know, even when we're not ready. Part 9. What if it was real? Welcome back. You're deep in it now. Not in danger, not in fear, just in quiet wonder. That gentle space where impossible things begin to feel almost possible. So let's ask the question plainly. What if it really happened? What if the Philadelphia experiment wasn't a hoax, or a misremembered event, or a story passed from one restless mind to another? What if in 1943 a naval vessel did vanish? What if a door opened by accident or design and something stepped through? Would we ever know? Would the world be told, or would the truth be buried? Maybe it already is. In redacted files, in military logs that never made it to daylight, in the eyes of people who've seen too much and say too little. And maybe this isn't just about one ship. Maybe it's about how close we are to tearing the veil every day. How close we are to touching things we don't understand. Time, space, consciousness, the thin line between thought and reality. Sometimes the world leaves breadcrumbs, a story that won't die, a strange detail no one can explain, a person who remembers something they shouldn't. They come like dreams, fleeting, incomplete, but real. So tonight, what if you allowed it? What if for these few quiet minutes you didn't doubt it happened? What if you just felt what it would mean? That time can shift, that space can bend, that minds can travel beyond where bodies are. Not as fantasy, but as something waiting for stillness, waiting for someone to listen. Maybe you already are. Part 10. Where the story sleeps. Welcome back, one last time tonight. You've drifted with this mystery, not as a skeptic, not as a believer, just as someone willing to wonder. And that's enough, because some stories aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to be felt, slowly, like fog moving across quiet water. The Philadelphia experiment may never be proven, but it still lingers for a reason. It speaks to something deep in us, the urge to go beyond the known, the pull toward the hidden, the part of us that believes, maybe, just maybe, the world isn't finished, revealing itself. Not everything fits neatly into facts. Some truths are soft, unstable, like echoes. Maybe that ship did vanish, maybe it didn't. But in telling the story, we reach into that space where science, memory, and imagination meet. And that's where mystery lives. It's not about answers, it's about the feeling that something more might be possible. Tonight, you've touched that, and now it can rest with you. So close your eyes. Let the water grow still. Let the fog pull back. Let the ship return to harbor. You are safe. You are still. And the mystery can sleep beside you. Because, in the quiet, even the strangest stories find peace.